My wife took off and left the 1-year-old in bed, and she's in there crying.
It's going to be a good show.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever I have a new idea for an app, one of the first things I do is go find a domain name for it. The company I use, and have used for years, is Hover.com. Hover.com has a clean and easy-to-use interface. They don't try to upsell me on a bunch of services I don't want or need, and they provide free whois masking for the domains I register. So if I register a domain that's not directly tied to devchat.tv, people don't need to know that I'm the one that owns it. They also offer domains with all kinds of top-level domains like .codes and .computer, and others like .coffee and .pizza. So when you have your next idea strike, go to hover.com/JavaScript to get it. Once again, that's hover.com/JavaScript.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another JavaScript Jabber show. This week on our panel we have Amy Knight.
Hello from Nashville.
Corey House.
Hello from sunny Kansas City.
Back by popular demand, Aaron Frost.
Hello.
We should have you just fill everybody in on what you've been up to lately before we introduce our guest.
Oh, so I've been changing jobs. I've been, it's like a lot of people, just busy, but I switched from a company called Domo to a company called SaltStack. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. And I decided I need to start getting back into your podcast. So I'm happy that you let me back in.
Yep, we're happy to have you.
Yeah.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv, and I'm just going to quickly plug Angular Remote Conf. If that's your speed, if you're into Angular, go check it out. We're a few weeks ahead, so it might be over by the time this comes out. If not, then it's this week. So anyway, go check it out. We have a special guest this week, and that is John David Dalton.
Hi, from Redmond, Washington.
Yeah, you've been on the show before. Do you want to kind of update people as to who you are and where you're at and what you do?
Sure. So I'm John David Dalton. I am the last time I was on the show, I think I was probably talking about Lodash. Lodash is a modular utility library that handles working with arrays, strings, objects. It's heavily used in the Node ecosystem, but also in the browser as well. I also work at Microsoft. I'm on the Edge team for web apps and frameworks. What I do there is things like ensure JavaScript libraries and frameworks work well in Edge or the Windows platform. I also do a lot of open source work too, and one of those things is the thing I'll be talking about today.
It's funny. It seems like, at least lately, we've been having a lot of folks on from Microsoft. A lot of interesting stuff going on over there.
Yeah, I love it. What I get to do is pretty cool.
Yeah, you guys just picked up Sean Larkin too, which is pretty cool.
Yes, he's actually on my floor, so that's super fun. I've already got to hang out with him just a bit, but I'm looking forward to working with him too.
That's cool. That's cool. You guys sit so close.
Yeah.
So he moved out to Redmond then?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and we've also got a regular panelist on Adventures in Angular, John Papa, who also works over there. So anyway, let's go ahead and dig into this. So ES modules in Node. Now, my brain is still trying to wrap around what this is. You kind of want to give us the elevator pitch on this?
Okay, sure. So I was trying to I would just go start from the very beginning. So I have Lodash, and Lodash is a utility library, but it's version 5. I wanted to adopt ES modules and ES module syntax without transpiling or shipping 2 bundles, because at the moment I have a file size constraint where the Node package is 4 megabytes on disk, and that's because it's a popular dependency. It's the most directly dependent on package in Node or in NPM. You could have 30 copies of this dependency in your Node modules folder, which eats up disk space. So I didn't want to ship a dual bundle and inflate the size even more. In fact, I'm working to reduce the Lodash 5 package size from 4 megabytes to 90 kilobytes. And in part, I'm going to be using this loader. And so I created a module loader for Node that allows you to use the ES module syntax of import and export in Node version 4+ today. It's a small zero dependency loader that you require once, and then after that your import and export just work. That's the pitch for it. It also has extra features though, because there is a transition period to the Node way of doing modules, and the Node way of doing modules, I'm putting like quotes around that, is a little bit more restricted or different than the browser's way of specifying ES modules. In the browser, you have there you go. In the browser, you have a type signal or a parse goal signal, and that is the type attribute equals module, and that tells the browser to treat that code as an ES module instead of a standard script. In Node, they don't have that. So what they have instead, they're going to use the file extension to be that signal. And so if your file is .mjs or modular JavaScript, it will load and treat that as an ES module instead of a CommonJS module. And so that's the loader. The features it allows you to do, though, is by default, you have the .mjs extension, but a lot of devs like to use the .js extension. So there's ways to actually enable detecting ES module syntax in a .js file and loading that up and having it work just like it was a .mjs file.
See, that's what I was going to say. I was like, dude, if that's for real, then all we're going to do is end up with everyone naming all their files .mjs, which in that case, why not just leave it as .js? But you're saying you've got it, you've got a workaround for that? Like this library you've got makes it so I don't have to do that? Or
Right, correct. So there's a single configuration option. I wanted to make, so the reason I chose the name standard ESM and published it on the standard namespace is because I wanted it to be something that devs could reach for easily, and I wanted it to seem almost built-in. So you have that built-in feel. It's super small. It's around 40 kilobytes, so not bad for being a parser and module loader there. And with a single option, you can jump into to using .js. You can also there's a handful of options there too. It supports gzip modules, which is what gives Lodash version 5 allows it to be 90 kilobytes. There's some options in there for CommonJS compatibility because .mjs when you're doing it the Node way won't have certain environment variables that have existed in CommonJS. There'll be ways eventually around that with the import.meta object to store metadata, but that is still being spec'd out, so it's not quite solid yet how that will be tackled. But yeah, with this, a single option allows you to use .js or by default, and defaults are important. By default, it does follow the Node way. So this ESM module loader is the only loader that I know of out right now that actually tries to follow Node's planned path for ES module support. There's rules in there, for example, about global module resolution. There's rules about what file extensions are allowed. There's rules about the search order of module types. So, for example, by Node's rules for ESM, it will search for the .mjs file before the .js file. So there's all kinds of rules in place and paths you have to follow to be a Node way kind of loader. And so I'm trying to do that first. I'm actually working with several people in Node core to make sure that the project aligns with Node. Because it does have a name like standard, it is in its advantage to be spec compliant and follow Node's rules by default.
So I have a big question. Because I'm just trying to understand exactly the benefits. So let's say I go with your standard module library and I pick the .mjs file system. I try and I let you corral me down like the default path. Mm-hmm. What are the benefits of using your standard module system over just the default one? Like, what do I get?
So the default module system is CommonJS, and so that is Node's old module format. The new one is trying to align with the module system that the language, JavaScript itself, is providing. So this is the same module system that the browser supports now. Most browsers support it either flagged as experimental features or actually shipping in the browsers. I know Safari shipped it. I think Chrome's next version will ship it unflagged too. So modules, ES modules, the JavaScript built-in module format is already being shipped in these environments. So this is just Node's way of doing that. So if you like your import, your export, your ES6 plus syntax, you'll be able to do that. If you don't, then you can always continue to use CommonJS. Or you can use a mix of the two.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question about something you just said a minute ago, and something I'd heard before. So you're saying that with yours, you're spec compliant, whereas with Babel, it's not. Can you point out the differences there?
Okay. So I don't think I called out Babel specifically, but
okay.
So Babel. So yes, our loader is more spec compliant in ways than Babel. And that is just because Babel is a transpiler to generate source, but doesn't have any hooks into the runtime. So I can, with our loader, we can follow Node's behavior of of things that go beyond just syntax transpilation, like module loading order, searching for modules, the kinds of things like what environment variables are exposed. That's something that the ESM loader can do that Babel can't do. Babel is also a full transpiler. It transpiles experimental syntax. It transpiles a whole bunch of syntax. I think they even now have TypeScript support and FlowType support and all kinds of stuff. Because of that, can be a little heavy. The ESM loader is just focused on the import-export and live binding syntax, so it's a lot lighter. I mean, it's 40 kilobytes total compared to megabytes and megabytes and megabytes with Babel.
That makes sense.
So, John, I was just thinking through how this will play out in the future when Node has native support for MJS.
Right.
What would my experience be if I'm a developer that's committed to using your setup here? Mm-hmm. Would I basically stay on your setup until effectively the vast majority of developers are using recent versions of Node that have full support for the MJS specification, and then I'd take I am almost thinking about what you're describing here as a polyfill. Is that a fair comparison?
So yeah, it is. It's essentially that. So the problem with ESM support in Node is that it has to start somewhere, and that means that all versions before that starting point don't support that syntax. And so unless you're only supporting, in this case, it's going to be Node 10, released in April 2018. Unless you're only supporting Node 10 plus with your code, then you won't really be able to use the built-in ESM support without having like a double bundle where you transpile your code back to CommonJS anyways. So the ESM loader allows you to continue to write as if you were using Node 10, but use Node 4 plus, and continue to ship just one version of your code. Whenever the old versions of Node drop away, which is officially 2020, so at that time, if you wanted to, you could then just drop the standard ESM loader and then change basically change your one entry point file instead of having to rewrite your code base. It's just right now our loader requires basically the invocation and then loading of your main entry point. And so all you would have to do is effectively just delete that loader, that two-line file, and then repoint it to the actual entry point it was calling. And that's it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So in the meantime, while I'm running this, then, is there any performance impact to me having this extra layer in here?
So there is always a performance impact. But in our case, what's been interesting is that in my benchmarks, CommonJS, so the existing module format, tends to be a little faster than native ES module support. Because the ES module loader is actually CommonJS under the hood. I mean, to support Node 4 plus, it's got to be CommonJS. There's an opportunity there for the standard ESM loader to improve its performance. Right now, it's effectively on par with built-in ESM, which is fantastic. But I just released this 2 weeks ago or so, so I'm sure there's places to optimize and actually take it to either being almost faster than native. I'm pretty sure we can get there. Right now, we're dealing with like microsecond differences. So I know there's probably like a cache miss somewhere or something that I can memoize to push me over the edge there and actually achieve better performance.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I really am looking forward to that. I can't wait for someone to pop in with like a simple fix that gives me some wins. So. Right.
So if we step back slightly, I'm just curious. This strikes me as something that took a lot of thought and a lot of time for you to pull off. I know you're with Microsoft now. Is this sort of the fruits of you working for Microsoft? Are they giving you free time to do this sort of awesome work?
So yes, I have been working on this there because this is something that impacts the community. I have been able to, as part of my web apps and frameworks title, work on this and polish it for consumption by the community at large. So that's why the blog post is being guest posted on Microsoft's and mirrored on the Edge blog there too. So they've been super cool about that and allowing me to work on that. I've also worked with Ben Newman of Meteor. So the ESM loader is actually a fork of another project. So just like Lodash was a fork, standard ESM is a fork of another project, and that project was called Reify. And Reify has been using a similar technique for the last 13 months, and they've done that with tens of thousands of applications. So this is something that has been that was actually started over a year ago that I jumped onto and started to make it more generally consumable, like consumer friendly. So smaller, no dependencies, spec compliant, following the node way by default, improving its performance and things like that.
Interesting. I had not heard of Reify, so I'm just out here reading about it now that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, that's what this is actually came from. If you go back in standard ESM's history, commit history, it becomes Reify. So I basically just took that, started contributing to Reify, started to improve its performance, its parse time, add features, and then eventually it was time to shift it over to being its own thing, because I mean it's got different goals than Reify does. But Ben is still a contributor. I've actually worked with him on championing language extension proposals for the TC39. So we're trying to get 2 language extensions passed there. One is they're both for symmetrical import-export syntax. So one is for namespace exports, allowing you to specify them in a way that matches import. And then the other one is trying to find a way to export a default from another module without having to first import it as an identifier. So we're still working on those 2, but it's been great working with him. He has taught me so much about parsers and ASTs and all of that stuff. I didn't know any of that going into it. It was super intimidating. It's its own syntax. I still don't know the rhyme or reason to some things, and I still have to just inspect the objects and stuff. But he was a super help there. He's also very up in the know on the ESM Spec and all of that stuff. So I mean, I couldn't have done it without him or the project itself. So yeah, big props.
So, John, can you clarify then, Reify and your ESM project are solving the same problem? I'm unclear. But you said that they had diverged, but I'm still unclear why I would choose yours over Reify.
Okay, so Reify's is made to use ES6 syntax in Node, but it doesn't necessarily follow Node's planned support path. So, for example, with standard ESM, if you're in a MJS file, we don't expose things like the module object, the require function, the exports object. The default binding of this is undefined. So we align closer to what Node will actually be. And Reify just allows you to have that syntax, but it still leaves in a lot of the CommonJS stuff there. It actually leaves in and exposes its API for doing that. So you can tie into the API that is actually being transpiled to. So it's got like a module.import that you can call and some other things. And standard ESM tries to hide all of that, so you don't see the actual implementation detail, and it aligns closer to Node's planned support.
Okay.
Standard Reify is something that's baked into Meteor as well, so it tends to follow Meteor's support path. And for me, that meant that it had to support something like PhantomJS level of JavaScript in certain files, which was a bummer because that's Safari 5 from 2010. So I couldn't use certain syntaxes, and that was not a nice restriction. But yeah, our projects are similar but different in that respect. Mine is the standard ESM is more following closer to what Node's support path is going to be.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I'm looking, I mean, Reify was created back well before we had any real idea how Node was going to handle modules. So
correct.
That's why it's designed the way it is. Whereas now you wrote yours with that gift of knowledge of the now standard and wrote it accordingly. So that helps, because really you're in a situation then, like you said, if you choose to use ESM here at some point a few years in the future, you can take it out and your app will just continue to work because you no longer need the polyfill for this behavior.
Yeah. Also, Reify supports some experimental syntax that I did not want to ship on by default. It supports nested imports, which is something that Ben was trying to champion as a syntax proposal. But that's a pretty big experimental feature to have on by default and still call the library like standard ESM. So by forking, I was able to remove some of the experimental on by default stuff and hide away the implementation detail. I can geek out on that too. Like there should be no way for you to actually find so behind the scenes, what standard ESM is doing is it's doing a quick in-place transpilation of your file to inline library calls to do things like import, export, to preserve live bindings. But that library itself is hidden away to where you can't access it. And what I do there is I assign it a new variable name every time you save the file. So you can't get it, because if you try to find it and you try to access it, then you save your file, then that variable name changes. So it's completely hidden away from it.
Very sneaky. I like it.
Yeah. The variable name itself actually has a zero width joiner in it too. So it makes it super hard to type. So the whole idea is that you're not supposed to be able to see the implementation detail. It's not supposed to leak into your environment. So to you, it just looks like built in.
This episode is sponsored by Hired.com. Are you searching for a new job? That can be stressful, scary, and time-consuming. Pushy recruiters try to sell you on roles you don't actually want, and the job boards make you feel like you're throwing your resume into a black hole, never to be seen again. And sometimes you go all the way through the interview process just to find out at the very end that the salary, offer, or company culture doesn't match what you're looking for. Hired is the world's most intelligent talent matching platform for full-time and contract opportunities in engineering, development, design, product management, data science, sales, and marketing. We make your job search faster, focused, and stress-free. Instead of endlessly applying to companies and hoping for the best, Hired puts you in control of when and how you connect with compelling new opportunities. After completing one simple application, top employers apply to hire you, and on Hired you receive personal interview requests and upfront salary information so you can make informed decisions about what opportunities to pursue over a condensed timeline. Hired offers access to more than 4,000 innovative employers, including big brand names like Facebook and smaller emerging startups. The size and type of company you want to connect with is totally up to you. And we help you find new opportunities in 17 major cities in North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Open to relocation? Let them know. Your privacy and autonomy in your job search is of utmost importance. And if you go check them out at the show's link, that's hire.com/JavaScript Jabber, you can get double the hiring bonus that they offer. That's $600 instead of $300. So go check them out at hire.com/JavaScript Jabber today.
So one thing that I'm wondering about, you mentioned that you were pulling this together so that you could make the package size smaller for Lodash. And I'm curious, how does this actually help with that?
So one of the experimental features I have is for gzip support. So Node has a module called zlib. It's built in. And that built-in module allows you to load and inflate gzipped files. So what the standard ESM loader allows you to do is with an option called gz, if you turn that on to true, then it will start to recognize .js.gz files and .mjs.gz files. So just like in the web page or on the web where you can load gzipped resources, you can now load gzipped resources as part of your Node package.
Oh, that's cool.
Right, and so if you look at the actual source code for standard ESM, so if you download the package and open it in your Node modules folder, you'll see that the ESM.js is actually ESM.js.gz. It's a gzipped file, which is 40 kilobytes. So that's actually what's being loaded is that gzipped file. And so for Lodash, what I will do is take its 400 plus or 600 plus modules. It's one of those. It's a ton of modules. Gzip them. And then when you request them, because normally people's Lodash usage tends to be 5 or 6 modules. So of those, that 400 plus modules, you'll load 5 or 6, and it will load them and inflate them on the fly for you. And the cost of inflation of a gzipped file is pretty cheap, especially when you're considering something like Lodash, which has a lot more modules than are actually used.
Okay, so I'm still trying to understand the benefits of gzip when it comes to Node usage, because gzip makes tons of sense to me on the web where I'm worried about saving bandwidth. But when it comes to Node, are you really just worried about saving disk space?
So in this case, Node is used in a lot of places. And one of those places are things like AWS Lambdas and Azure Functions. So you have these serverless environments that have smaller disk space quotas. So I think AWS is like 300 megabytes, which can get eaten up pretty quickly with a Node modules folder, especially if you have 3 or 4 copies of Lodash in there at 4 megabytes a pop or 4.5 megabytes a pop. It starts to limit what you can do with those services. So being able to have a reduced package size for your Node modules environment is a win there. So while you may have like 500 gigabyte hard drives, there's environments that are space limited.
I was just wondering, I'm imagining you're having a lot of conversations these days with people in the community that are either your friends or people who you trust. What's kind of the general feedback you're getting from folks on this standard ESM library?
Okay, so I was actually super surprised. It's been overwhelmingly positive. Usually there's a counter blog post out by now on anything that's released, right?
So true.
About why something is hazardous. And I was surprised, like, this has been my most popular tweet. The blog post has gotten a ton of views. It's overwhelmingly positive feedback. The one negative that I'm working on and that has been reported is that to make this loader work, it's tying into a lot of pseudo-private methods of Node. So to make the magic happen, it's got to touch things that are not properly exposed. So not officially exposed APIs. But, so here's the but.
You're just like a wizard and you just know they exist somehow.
Yeah, this was kind of my question that I posted in the chat.
The problem with doing that is that there's no guaranteed support from Node on those APIs. So they can and have changed from version to version of Node. Now, the ESM loader works in version 4 through 9 nightly. So, I mean, there's several versions that it currently works in. But the concern is that what about 9.2 or 10 or 11, right? So I've been working with Node Core to significantly reduce the use of internal APIs. And so the next version release of the standard ESM loader will have most of them pulled out so that it's no longer tying into a global hook. For its common case, it's reduced almost all of its internal API calls to nothing, or to supplemental bonus functionality that is guarded with try-catch and sniffs and all of that stuff to help reduce the concern there. So that's been the main concern, is that it's magic, and so the cost of that is internal API calls. And so now the effort is working with Node and Node core members to remove those API calls. So it's something that Node doesn't have to support, and something that makes the ESM loader a little bit more robust and resilient to changes. So that means that it makes it better for people to rely on. So it's going to be a win. Right now I'm working on that. So that'll be out probably sometime this week. I'll do a version update. And then things will just get better from there. So whenever I release something, or whenever anyone releases something, usually that's when you get, like, if people are paying attention, which is a good thing, and you're releasing software, then a lot of times you'll get just a ton of bugs. And so right now we're kind of in that ton of bug phase where this thing has now been released. People are starting to use it and hammer on it. And so I've been doing bug fixes and patch releases there. So over the next month or so, I suspect standard ESM will just continue to get stronger and better and more reliable, and more resilient to things like pseudo-private internal API use. So yeah, that was the main concern, but I think I've found a way to avoid the problem there. So other than that, I haven't had any other main concerns there. I've tried to work with, so I didn't develop this loader in a vacuum. I've tried to work with people at Node, people in the community. So there's a strong portion of the community that has a very negative field for the .mjs file extension. So I've worked to make sure that they have an option, that Node is happy because it follows Node's path, that standards folks are happy because it's following the TC39 spec ESM rules, that it doesn't step on tooling of Webpack, that Babel folks are happy, that NPM folks get the heads up about this thing too. So like, it requires just working with lots and lots of people to try to make sure that this thing doesn't cause problems, because I want to use it and then also use it for Lodash. And since Lodash touches so many packages, it touches over 150,000 packages.
Oh, wow.
In some way. So if Lodash takes a dependency on something, it's got to be stable, and it's got to be something that's not going to cause the ecosystem problems. And so that's why a lot of work has been put into standard ESM to make sure that it's not going to step on toes. Right now, it's a module loader, which means it does have to touch at the moment one global API. But I've worked to ensure that you can actually support versioning there, that only packages that opt in to the ESM loader get ESM support. So it's not going to be something like, remember there was that package for coloring your console that manipulated the string.prototype and caused problems with Node packages. I've tried to make sure that ESM doesn't do something like that, that it only affects packages that opt into it, that take standard ESM as a dependency, a peer dependency, or an optional dependency. And so the work with Node right now to remove reliance on internal APIs is actually going to help that too.
One thing that I'm wondering about this, though, is so you can package your stuff up with gzip and, that's all cool, but doesn't it ship everything when you NPM install? So aren't you going to essentially get two versions unless you're using the ESM loader And you know it?
So what the gzip support for that's going to ship the gzipped file and then inflate it at runtime for you. So it's not two versions there. It's just going to inflate it at runtime, and then so you're going to have a inflation cost there. It's minimal in most cases. And many times, sometimes the actual I/O of a larger file is more than the cost of inflating the smaller file that's been gzipped.
No, I was asking something else. So when I do an npm install, it pulls the JavaScript file or files down to my computer.
Correct.
So for a while, are we going to be in this limbo where it's pulling down the uninflated and the inflated file, or the gzipped file and the regular file? Or is there going to be some flag in NPM that says, hey, I'm using ESM Loader. Can I please just get the gzip?
Well, the ESM Loader would be your dependency. So it would come down with your package as a dependency. And then you would use that to actually process and load the file of the gzip file. So you don't have to ship both the gzipped and the non-gzipped. If you're using standard ESM, it'll be a dependency, and then you can just load that as part of your package. What's nice is that because standard ESM is a loader for your package, your consumer doesn't have to know about it. It doesn't know that you're actually, the consumer of your package doesn't even know that it's not consuming CommonJS. To it doesn't know that what you've written is ES6 and that there's a loader that is handling that and handing it off in CommonJS in between. So your consumer doesn't have to know about the standard ESM thing. To them, it's an implementation detail that has no bearing on their usage.
Gotcha. That was the part that I was trying to figure out.
So we'll use the ESM loader for our stuff, but I'm not going to get the benefit of having a small Lodash download until Lodash starts using it, right?
Correct.
And that transitively down my dependency tree, I need everybody to start using it before I start seeing the NPM install speed up at all. That's it. That's what you're saying, right?
For the smaller bundle size or for the smaller on disk size, yes, you'll need to use that. There's also, so I have the standard namespace for NPM packages. I plan on releasing just a standard gzip module. So in case you don't want the whole ES6 ES module thing, you can just get the gzip component and enable that. I haven't published that yet, but that's the plan, is to just extract that from the ESM loader, make it its own package, and then you can use that. But for Lodash 5, whenever that is released and adopts it, that should affect a significant portion of the ecosystem right off the bat there. So everyone's node modules folder will get pretty small. We'll get smaller, sorry, not pretty small. We'll get smaller because of that. So yeah, the more people that use it, the smaller node modules will be.
So I've been thinking through the implications of this for tree shaking. Are there any? If I end up publishing my library using this, does that impact the story at all?
No, it shouldn't, because your source code is still ES6. Okay, so first of all, a listener may be like, well, it's not called ES6 anymore. It's called ES 2015 plus whatever. It's easier for me to say ES6. So for your ES6 code, Webpack or Babel or whatever you're using, or there's a Webpack alternative, but whatever
roll up.
Yeah, roll up. If whatever your bundler is, and the tool you use for tree shaking will still continue to work because it's just ES6 source code. So it doesn't see the whole loader thing at all. It doesn't need to be concerned with that. So rollup should continue to work. Webpack 3 should continue to work. You shouldn't have problems there.
Great news.
Yeah. With the patch to reduce internal API calls, I should have even better support for things like Babel Register. Right now, Babel Register works partly. I need to actually patch Babel Register to play nicer with other loaders. So there is actually other loaders out there. Babel Register is one of them. Babel Register is usually a dev dependency, though. It's for you to load like your unit test files and have it transpile on the fly. But it taps into a similar module hook. And at the moment, it assumes it's the only module hook. So it doesn't like hand off to a subsequent loader or go back through and try to see if there's a loader before it. ESM tries to do that and tries to pass off to other loaders if it can. So it'll try to pass it through and get picked up by other things. So I'm working with them to make sure that works. I've also worked with Webpack to support things like gzip. So I added the gzip loader to Webpack there. So if you are planning on doing that, you'll be able to actually bundle your gzip files with Webpack too. So there's a link to that loader in the README mentioning the gzip support there.
So, John, here's an odd one. I'm just thinking through, are we in a situation now then where everyone should be using ES modules when they're working in Node? Or who would you say, hey, stay away from this, this isn't for you?
I love ES modules. So, I mean, I'm for it. I think that the more people hammering on this, the better. What's nice is that since it is such a thin piece, you don't have to worry about a ton of transpilation cost, a ton of build time cost. Node 7 Plus supports 99% of ES6 Plus. So really the main missing piece there is just the import-export live binding bit, which is all this provides. So for me, it feels natural. I've already gotten used to writing import-export. So I like it. I tend to be one that favors the unambiguous grammar option. So basically the one that allows .js in there. But I mean, whatever, if you like MJS, that's the default. You can totally use that. If you like .js, or you can even specify that all files in your package are ESM or ES modules. And so it doesn't key off anything. It just assumes everything is. So yeah, I would say like, I don't know, if you don't like new language features, maybe ESM isn't for you. But for everyone else, I would say, yeah, give it a try, especially since it's Node 4 Plus.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking of a number of libraries that I've seen that will have both an ES5 and an ES6 build.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, given what you have here, that idea no longer makes sense. Would you agree? It just makes sense to go ahead and have an ES modules build and use this.
For Node specifically, yes. If you're developing something that wants to be run in an older browser that is using something like a UMD kind of wrapper around your module, then maybe you don't want to do that, just because import-export will only work in the newest browsers, right? But if you're developing something just for Node, then having import-export is great, and you don't have to worry about having that fallback. You don't have to worry about having the ES5 version of your Node package there, or doubling the size of your Node package by having both sources in your Node package. A lot of packages have like the module field, where that says like, hey, if you support ESM, use the module field. If not,
exactly.
Then use the main field and load the other one. And with standard ESM loader, you don't have to do that. You don't have to inflate the size of your package. You can just ship one code, and it's the same code is run on all Node versions. That's something that is not can't be said for the other approach, which is basically the tools that support it get one code path, and the tools that don't get another code path. And with standard ESM, it's all running the exact same code in every environment.
I don't think I read that sales pitch on your README. You should add that. That's an important one.
I know. So I will accept pull requests. If you want to add that bit to the README, please do. I'm pretty lousy with promotion, so like if you could help, that would be great. I will accept pull requests for that.
Lousy with promotion? You must be a developer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one other question that I had was why Node 4? Why not Node 6 or something a little bit more
It's because that's what's currently LTS at the moment.
Okay.
So I wanted to support the bare minimum supported version of Node that was officially supported. I also try to pull people up out of the ancient unsupported versions of Node. So that's why I didn't say like support 0.10.
Okay.
I could. Reify, before I started contributing to it, supported 0.8. And I said, no, let's push that up a bit to Node 4. And so that's why ESM Loader supports Node 4 Plus. Is I purposely pulled up the support bar to that. I would actually love to support just Node 7 because Node 7 point something has async functions, and those are magic and amazing. And I want to forget about all versions of Node before that.
All right. Any other questions that we should have asked or that we want to ask before we go to picks?
I just want to say thanks for working so hard. This sounds like not a small effort. And you talked to me about this like several months ago, and so I know you've been working on it for a while. And it sounds grueling and intense to get all the cats herded together and agreeing on what this should look like. So just my hat's off to you, man. Tip of the hat for getting this far.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a while in the works. I went back and read some discussions from back in March. So it's been a while. Ben has been working on this since June or May of 2016. So this is something that's been in the works for quite a while.
Nice. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks.
This episode is sponsored by Linode. Do you need a Linux server for your latest creation? Then check them out. They provide SSDs, 40 gigabit per second network connections, and top-of-the-line hardware to run your server on. It deploys Linux in seconds from the Linode cloud, and you can choose your Linux distro and node location right from the manager. They have locations in Asia, North America, and Europe, and they have a sweet set of tools to make it easy to manage it. If the web interface isn't your thing, they also have an API and a command line, so definitely go check them out. They also provide two-factor authentication, IPv6, DNS manager, cloning, scaling, and everything else that you want. So definitely get the most out of your Linux node and check them out at linode.com. And check them out at devchat.tv/linode.
Corey, do you want to start us off with picks?
Sure thing. I have 2 picks. My first pick was a post I came across on Medium about trending developer skills, where they looked at the technologies that Hacker News has found different startups are using. I found it very interesting. You could see some unsurprising trends, like React is quite popular and JavaScript is quite popular. AWS is big, but a lot of other interesting stats in there. If you're interested in seeing what to learn next, I'll share that in the show notes. And then my other pick is a book that I started reading last week that I'm really enjoying by Jez Humble and a number of other DevOps thought leaders, called The DevOps Handbook. I've only read about a quarter of it so far, but I really am enjoying how it's put together. If you're wanting to a rather concise read on DevOps and the ways to improve your processes there, I'd highly recommend what I've read so far. So those are my 2.
All right, Amy, what are your picks?
Let's see. So the first one, I'm going to pick November again. They announced 2 more keynotes. So Lori Voss from NPM, Kim Creighton, myself, and Ben. I'm horrible at pronouncing his last name. So I think it's like Alegbadu or something. Anyways, I really feel bad that I can't pronounce that correctly. I'll have to figure that out. So that's going to be my first pick. And the second pick...
Congratulations, Amy.
Yay!
Those are the keynotes. I think they're accepting submissions for talks till the 31st. So depending on when this comes out, you might still have time. And then I'm gonna pick your blog post, the ES modules in Node today, because it was pretty good. So if people want more information on this, they should check out that blog post. And then I usually use Medium to look at developer posts, but I got a little scroll happy the other day and this one was trending, and I shared it around with a bunch of my friends, and I can't say enough good things. If there are any single people who are dating, to check out this Medium story, but it's called Dating is Dead. Anyways, but if you're single and going through all this, like, this blog post is excellent. It's by somebody called The Angry Therapist, and it just had, I don't know, it'll make you feel good about the environment that you're in. So that's going to be my non-programming pick, and that's it for me.
I'm relieved that I'm married.
It's so bad.
Same here.
It's so bad. So if you are, this post will make you feel so much better.
That's right. Some of us are just lucky. Aaron, what are your picks?
Okay, I got 4 picks. I figured I'd come with some good ones for you. So, anyone who knows me knows that my favorite book is Ready Player One. And this last week, there's like an 18-minute breakdown of the new trailer that just came out. And it exposes all the different Easter eggs. It talks about the music and everything that went into just a few minutes of the trailer. Anyway, it's like an 18-minute nerd fest for Ready Player One heads. And so I'm going to pick that.
They're making it into a movie?
Oh, yeah. It comes out in March. It's going to be epic.
Sweet.
Yeah. Okay. Next pick. So life's been tough lately in the USA, and there's a show that I've been watching. It's called the Jim Jeffries Show. It's kind of like my fill-in for the Jon Stewart Daily Show now that Jon Stewart's not here. So I'm going to pick the Jim Jeffries Show. Everyone who needs a relief valve from just life in the U.S. news should go watch it. I read a really good book. I couldn't stop reading it, and it had me on one page, I'd be laughing, and on the next page, I'd be crying. And it was Kevin Hart's I Can't Make This Up book. It's on Audible as well, and he actually narrates it on Audible, and it's a fantastic read for anyone who's looking for a good book right now. And then my last pick is I need some team members to come work with me here at SaltStack. We're doing a lot of fun stuff with Angular. We're doing a lot of fun stuff with RxJS, and we're growing fast. And I'm looking for a few senior engineers to come work with me. So that's my last pick.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to jump in here with a few picks. Mine are much less code related, but nevertheless, I will pick them. The first one is, I'm just going to remind everybody about Angular Dev Summit, angulardevsummit.com. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's free. I also picked up a new tool, and I'm kind of liking it, and it's just for keeping track of relationships with people, and it's Zoho CRM, and so it's free as well. But it's nice because I can keep track of different people that we've had on the shows, as well as, relationships with sponsors and things like that. And so it's been working out pretty nicely. I'm still settling into it, so I don't know if this is a permanent thing or if it's just kind of got, I'm enjoying popping the bubble wrap is what I say when I'm still testing out a tool, and I'm kind of got happy feels about it. So anyway, but yeah, digging that. And then one other thing. So yesterday and today, I've been just spending a few hours here and there working on our old van. We have a Dodge Grand Caravan that's been sitting in our driveway for about a year since we got a new vehicle, and I decided I needed to fix it and sell it. And so I've just been working on that, trying to get it to run, and I'm almost done. But anyway, it's just kind of nice to get out and do something with your hands that's not typing on the keyboard and staring at a screen. And so I just encourage everybody to, go find something real, physical to do. And yeah. Anyway, so yeah, those are my picks. John, what are your picks?
Cool. I am picking for my first pick. I have two. A TC39 proposal for optional chaining. So if you're familiar with the CoffeeScript existential operator, this allows you to do dot syntax, so A, dot B, dot C, property lookup, but with like a question mark or a question mark dot, be allowed to check for properties that may or may not exist. So Lodash has a function called get, where you can do that. This is a syntax form of that to allow for easier property access.
That's awesome. I
love it. It's great. It's in the proposal. I would say if you can contribute to it, read over the docs for it, help to flesh it out and come up with examples. The spec is available on the TC39 GitHub repo. So there's a link there for it. And then the second pick I have is a friend of mine, Andy Pavia, has a company that released a product called Toybox. This is a easy to use 3D printer, and it's for kids. So u.make.toys. What's cool is that so they're crowdfunding right now, but the backend tech for this is using Meteor, and they're using ES modules for it. So the whole Reify ES module syntax thing flows right in with that too. So u.make.toys, and check that out.
I want one, and not for my kids.
Yeah, no, I've seen a couple of prototypes of it, and it reminds me of like when I was little playing with like the erector sets and all of that stuff. So it's super cool.
Awesome. If people want to keep tabs on what you're doing, or read your blog posts or whatever it is that you do these days to let people know what's going on, where should they go?
They should go to twitter.com/jdalton. I tweet primarily about tech, also about Boston Terriers and dogs. So it's a good mix.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks for coming, John.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We will catch everyone next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.